Hey, thanks for checking out this Geer Talk clip. This is a short segment where we're talking about the Shure Wireless Workbench coordination software. There's a lot to know about Wireless Workbench, so if you're interested, check out the full episode, link in the description below. Thanks. Okay, so this brings us to our practical, how do you use this stuff? Let's see it in action. Let's talk about the actual software, how you use it, how you get yourself from plugging in your hardware to a coordination plan and using your system. Guys, can we see my screen? Awesome.
So Ross has brought up the most recent version of Workbench here, and we're going to kind of talk our way through a basic setup and deployment. And the first thing you're going to notice is that all of the items that we've got plugged in and networked here in our office are showing up as online devices. This is the easiest way. If you had a rack already built, you show up and you plug it in, this is the quick and easy. It's also possible that you may need to be setting up offline devices, things that don't exist either in that moment or you don't know what they are until you get there. It could be other products that are not Shure products. It could be Shure products that are not network-based. And you need to input a bunch of information. So Ross, why don't you talk us through what you're looking at here?
Yeah, so I just went up to add new device, top left-hand corner, and I'm scrolling through, like we mentioned, every possible Shure device. I'm gonna add some older equipment, some things that are not themselves maybe directly available in Wireless Workbench. And I'm gonna say, hey, I've got 10 channels of ULX analog wireless in the J1 band. Maybe I also have some AKG wireless. Let's just throw a couple of channels in here. I have no clue what this band is. We're just going to see what happens. In this way, you can build a complete inventory list of network Shure devices and any offline equipment you might have.
So the inventory is going to be kind of your just big pile of equipment that's been organized by type or by manufacturer. And we're going to have to now make a decision as to how do we want to frequency coordinate. So right there in the center, there's another tab. You kind of, like a book, go left to right. And you're going to want to say, what exactly do I want to coordinate? Well, we're looking at an empty space at the moment because we have no scan data. We've got no local zip code data for television stations. We've got no online transmitters showing any information. So the first thing is we want to bring all that stuff to the surface.
So first, I'm going to come over here in the bottom right-hand corner, and under Spectrum, Brandon mentioned TV channels. Again, our primary source of interference here is the DTV broadcast, folks. I'm going to search my zip code here, 92648, and this is going to itemize for me everyone who is registered with the FCC because they are broadcasting at a certain strength. They got to register with the FCC. We pull from that database, and we can import that information here into Workbench. From there, I can select, I've got a spectrum manager, which under my scan sources in the top left-hand side, I've selected, and I'm going to scan. Now this is going to do that full wideband sweep through everything that the spectrum manager can scan. I'm going to narrow my window a little bit so we can focus up on the UHF band, which is where we are going to coordinate for this Axient digital hardware. But Brandon, talk us through what we're seeing.
So the Axient AXT600 is got multiple radios in it, so you're seeing it actually scan from multiple bits. Instead of trying to go the full spectrum and then the full spectrum again for an A and a B, it's broken it up into these little sections, and it's going to do all of the little sections at once A, and you're just seeing it start now doing all the little sections B. You can notice you know, there's threshold lines that you see as far as what is being accepted above and below the noise floor there, and anything that's razor sharp and really spiky, that's probably one of the frequencies we're transmitting on right now. It's either Ross's pack, my pack, the in-air system, could be Sam on the other end of the building there. But you can tell a television station, the main reason why we keep track of those television stations is they're so powerful. The power that they broadcast, you know, we were excited to get 40 milliwatts to go down to the donut shop on the back of a bicycle. 40 milliwatts is child's play to these very large television broadcast stations. So in the game of getting signal to noise to have a functional wireless, you really don't want to be where the party's at. You want to go to as quiet of an area as possible to get your devices up and running online.
So now that I have the scan data, it's important to note this is a snapshot of this moment of time in this location. If I was trying to coordinate a plan for my wireless that was going to be a theater run that's, you know, every evening, you know, curtain goes up at 7 p.m., there might be sources of interference that are not on air right now in the morning that would be on later in the day. So a snapshot scan is great, and it's what Workbench is going to use to map out that coordination plan. if you want to be extra sure that you, extra sure, see what we did?
Good. Gotcha.
That you've got all possible sources of interference, you can come up here to the top under frequency plot. And this is going to allow us to continuously scan our airwaves over time. I could do the same thing here. I could select a channel, I could tell it to scan, and this will repeat the scan process until I hit stop. And then I can scroll back in time and see when certain sources of interference occur. These broadcast TV stations, not everyone is on air 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Many of them are on weeknights, evening news, weekends, house of worship services, local public access. Your local city council, every first meeting of the month might be broadcast on a Friday evening. This is going to help you catch all of those sources of interference, register the peaks, and use that to import into your coordination space.
If you're doing any large production, broadcast, festival, anything that you actually could do this scanning a full day in advance, it'll be of great service to you. You'll have real information for that spot in space, on the Earth. All of the other things that we have available to us are either predictions or they are just mathematics that have been given to the FCC and spit back out to us. But as we all know, the physics and reality of the real world can often be very different. Buildings can be reflecting. You can have a boat show in town you didn't know about. There could be, you name it, that could be causing you problems. This is the only way to know what those problems are and exactly where they are so that you can avoid them on show day.
So once I have my scan data, I have now imported my frequency list. So under add frequencies, I say select frequencies from inventory. I can add them all in, or I can select manually which frequencies I want to coordinate today. In my case, I just had them all populate. And then I can hit calculate. And what Workbench is going to do is essentially run through thousands and thousands of permutations of possible combinations of putting all of these wireless channels on air in the cleanest possible spaces of the spectrum that each wireless system can tune into. As you can see right off the bat, the ULX in the J1, now that's an analog system with a relatively narrow tuning bandwidth, about 36 megahertz. Given that limitation, Workbench is saying with this interference layout, I can only find 5 clean channels for you to operate on. Now there are, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, basically green means good, right? And red means bad. Can you zoom in to like 440 through 600 or something so we can see a little bit clearer how this is sliced and diced, not on top of any television channels, but entirely around them? Right at the top, your expand zoom.
Yeah, my bookends are not dynamic at the moment. Live TV, folks.
Yeah.
So under normal circumstances, and I don't want to close and reopen, or maybe I will, if Brandon, you can vamp. But we can narrow in, and what you see here is the G57 band. That's the UHF band. We're looking at this very wide window because that's what the Spectrum Manager could tune into. Checking out what Verizon's doing up here in 700 megahertz for
It's LTE.
Yeah.
You'll see, as we do many of these scans, so as Shure employees and as RF techs and all that, you start to collect scans as you go to different cities, different venues, different times of year. You collect these scans and you start to build yourself a database. So you could stack many of these scans on top of each other to try to cover all potential interferences and go from there. But even with the best of planning, you may get to an event where you're going through and there's a tiny little bump. And you go, it wasn't RF, it wasn't audio. I'm sitting right here, the receiver looks good, qualimeter's looking good. How do you justify or explain to somebody that what they heard was not an audio drop, it was something else? There's a really cool feature, a really powerful feature inside of Workbench called Timeline. And Timeline, if we bring it up here, is basically the proof. It's going to monitor every single aspect of the transmitter and the receivers, and you can see how it breaks down how he's in quadversity. So we're seeing the 4 antennas, we're seeing the connection to the 4 antennas, we're seeing our audio ability, we're seeing the 2-wave Zigbee radio connection, and we're seeing his battery life. So as we go along and we say, look, that wasn't an RF drop, there physically wasn't audio in that moment. Somebody wasn't talking that should have been talking. Or there was a hit. Is the hit coming from an instrument or is it coming from the lead mic that's on stage? You now can go through your monitor and you can find where was the problem or interference. And this thing just kind of records in real time. you can save these files. You can save every show that you ever do to show somebody that you've never had an RF drop. It is pretty impressive to be able to go back in time and dissect every part and piece of it to know if and where the problem located. Where was it?
Also from the monitor tab, we're looking at my channel right now. And so we see everything you can see from the front panel, we can see here. Of course, I can also get into the properties of this channel, and any change to the settings that I would be able to do from the front of the receiver, I can do in the software as well. These are live in real time. I could adjust settings on the receiver, and since I'm on an ADX transmitter, my show link will change that information in real time as well on my transmitter. So very powerful tool, and like Jen mentioned, if there are two people simultaneously making adjustments, you can both be flicking the light switch on and off in different parts of the house. So look out there.
It's great for walk tests, like when you're setting a system up and you want to go walk and stand where your talent's going to be. You want to go walk and stand where they might go out into the crowd at this particular point, or you actually go out and physically can tell that it's working well. And you can even turn on the Axion digital transmitters. They've got a tone generator, so you don't find those gaps in between words by walking around going test, test, check, what, test, test. You can actually play a tone, see the tone, and then anytime the tone is interrupted, if you hear it, and then you come back to your timeline and you have the ability to see it.
So, Brandon, we got just a couple minutes left. Justin, how are we doing on questions? Do we have anything we want to mention?
We're all good for now.
It sounds like Mike Cromer has been meeting all of your question and comment needs in the YouTube chat. Thank you, Mike. Jen, with just a couple minutes remaining, is there anything absolutely critical we have not mentioned with Wireless Workbench that we, let's be honest, should have?
I don't know. I think probably the other thing that I like to point out that people don't realize that they can do is how adjustable the views are. Because you can create multiple monitor views. You can change what you're seeing in the channel strip. Those are saved with your show file. So, as you're working, you can really make that interface to be what exactly that you want to see.
Right, so you're seeing me here. I'm creating a new monitor workspace. If you want something dedicated to your most important channel on air, which in the case of Geer Talk, oh, Brandon.
Talking Gear.
There you
sorry,
go.
Talking Gear.
Thank you from the Peanut Gallery. Yes, this monitor space, very customizable, can follow you as the individual RF coordinator into what kind of makes sense to your taste. Couple other things we want to mention before we sign off for today. Training opportunities. So this was, let's be honest, a pretty quick overview. Lots of different resources out there in the Shure world. We do have the Shure Audio Institute, which is an online learning platform. There is an RF certification course, series of video tutorials, some short quizzes, really kind of dives into the concepts of RF, some of the hardware, the software, best practices. We've also got shure.com/webinar for lots of archived content. Please sign up for the Shure Pro Tech Talks, which are happening, Sam, Jen, regularity every Tuesday.
First and third Tuesdays of the month.
Awesome. First and third Tuesdays of the month. We hope to be back in front of you in a classroom setting to do our masterclass series. Hopefully more on that as soon as the rest of the world starts doing those sorts of things. Brandon, anything else?
Yeah, I was just going to add that there is a very extensive and high-quality training for Wireless Workbench. It's available on YouTube. It's available at the Shure Audio Institute. And what's great about it is they've broken it into segments. So if you need a particular feature, you remember how to use 60% of it, and you get to a feature that you really need, there is really, really in-depth and I say high quality. You can see the front of the equipment. The instructor is very precise, and they get things down to 2- and 3-minute windows by feature. And if you just kind of while setting up your gig and you need to get things together, let it run on the side of you, everything you need to know is available right there as a part of that YouTube.